this video, we're diving deep into what could truly be the ultimate solution for Nigeria, Africa, and indeed the world. We'll explore why colonization is still impacting us today, even if it's invisible, and why understanding this hidden system is crucial for our future. We'll discuss how the Nigerian economy and society continue to suffer because of ideologies rooted in our colonial past, and reveal practical steps towards real change, starting with revisiting the 1999 Constitution. This video contains crucial information to help us reach our potential, both individually and collectively. If you are curious about your true potential and how your life connects to a much bigger picture, you won't want to miss this. Stay with us for the full details. Welcome back. If you are new here, please subscribe and follow us on all NEAT social media platforms at neatcommunity.ng. Also, it will be nice if you can turn on the notification icon so you can get notified each time we upload new content. There are a number of topics we need to cover, so rest assured we will be uploading new content every week. NEAT is an acronym for Nigerians Engineering Astounding Tomorrow. It is an initiative designed to bring together young and intelligent Nigerians who have what it takes to look beyond the challenges and divisions in the country and formulate a plan that would transform the nation and follow through with the plan. Great! Now, let's get right into it. The ultimate solution to Nigeria, Africa, and indeed the world. This is one of the most important videos we're making because it is going to bring together most of what we have said in the past and what we will say in the future. The hope is to awaken your consciousness, to first appreciate the challenges, and then to act in a way that will make a difference for yourself and generations after you. If you recall in one of the videos, it was already said that making a difference for the generations to come, in particular, is the will of God and the true purpose for our existence. Good. As you may have heard us say in previous videos, the ultimate problem of Nigeria is colonization. Although, as argued in Beyond the Past, the problem started way before colonization. Colonization was just a way through which the system amalgamated from slavery. We'll discuss what this system is in a bit. For now, let's make this bold claim that for Nigeria to move forward, it needs to decolonize. There is absolutely no other way to enhance the Nigerian economy apart from decolonization. In one of the previous videos, we mentioned that people often view colonization from the perspective of past events. They assume it is something that happened several years ago, say in 1914, and ended in 1960. They do not understand that this is a completely false narrative and the main reason for not taking the task of decolonization seriously. Colonization did not end in 1960. Instead, it is better understood as taking a new format to adjust to the realities. Before 1960, it was indirectly operated by externals, but in 1960, local administrators took over. However, the system didn't change a bit. The main issues of colonization remained intact. Actually, a better way to put it is that instead of decolonization, it even got worse in the hands of the local administrators. Yes, the very thing that defined colonization got worse. So what is this thing that defined colonization? And why is it important to remove it for Nigeria to move forward? The best way to visualize the situation is that in Nigeria specifically, the people moved from internal disconnect from ancestral knowledge to disputes between communities. This contributed to slavery, which then morphed into colonization by indirect rule. From the indirect rule, the system then moved to colonization by an invisible rule. Each step of that downgrade brought its own economic and moral decadence. In each of those downgrades, there were always some local people who aided and supported the process knowingly but mostly unknowingly. At each downgrade, those numbers of people increased. The invisible rule in operation today features a system where an overwhelming majority of the people support the colonial system either knowingly or unknowingly, more than those who oppose it. The first question you may want to ask yourself is, where do you stand? Do you support the colonial system or do you oppose it? as discussed in the video that talks about the purpose of life. Provided your daily life is not devoted to consciously fighting this colonial system, then you are under the invisible spell, which is making you unconsciously promoting it. As long as one lives, there is no option to be neutral. Why is this of any importance to you? First of all, we all have a purpose for existence. The biggest act of foolishness is to be created for a purpose and end up living in contradiction to that purpose. It is a waste of breath, existence, and opportunity. The second part is failure to fulfill potential, which anyway is the same loss of opportunity. When you are designed to live as a king, an inventor, or a director of global affairs and you end up living like a laborer, that is a loss of opportunity to fulfill your potential. Without this kind of conversation, how would you know if the life you are living is yours, or if you are merely living another person's life, accepting standards set for you by another person, which is way below your uniquely designed standard? So yes, this isn't an average conversation. It is about you and your generation. And don't forget that if a limitation is placed on you, or you are influenced to live another person's life, it will limit the quality and standard of life or thinking of your next generation if not addressed. To really understand these things, we need to go back to this argument of invisible rule. We need to unpack its structure to help you understand where you stand and where you are currently. Let's start with slavery. This was an ideology of forcing and commanding people to act and produce for others with no mutual understanding or agreement whatsoever. It was about ensuring one human benefit while another human suffers. It was a blatant use of force and aggression to force an outcome. It is not even the forcing of the outcome that makes it such a horrible thing, but the denaturing and destruction of the other person's purpose. The so-called slaves had a way of life that was completely destroyed or redirected. Think about it. Can we say that those who were made slaves were designed to be slaves? If they were, then why did it stop? Why did some, if not all, resist it? No, they were not designed to be slaves. They had their unique purpose. We can discuss why they had to become slaves if it was not their purpose in another video. For now, the key focus is their loss and another person's gain. Colonization by indirect rule was built on the back of slavery. It was about ensuring that gains from slavery were consolidated, but it came with a seemingly legal premise. Unlike in slavery, when there was hardly any agreement, colonization by indirect rule formulated one-sided treaties to both consolidate and continue the same ideology. The colonial perpetrators used the premise of those treaties to not only benefit, but also prevent the entire people from knowing their purpose, let alone following it. This was then followed by the invisible rule. Some people try to define it as neo-colonialism. They paint the narrative that the old colonial way does not allow the new system to thrive. They often talk about how European or external powers continued to benefit from the gains of colonialism, either through trade, foreign aid, multinational corporations, military agreements, and global financial institutions. This narrative often ignores the reality that systemically nothing changed. Defining it as an invisible rule helps to show the true picture. It lets us see that the system remained intact, only that the main thing driving it is shielded away from the public. It also lets us see that the structure established during the colonial process remains intact. For example, there was no legal basis for the amalgamation of the different entities either into protectorates or even one entity in 1914. Yet, in 1960, under the pretext of independence, the same forceful amalgamation continued. The pretext for the enforcement of the Clifford Constitution in 1922 is the same pretext for the enforcement of the 1999 Constitution. It is all the same logic that provided you can force something on people, that thing you forced on them has become legal. It's about establishing legality, not through discourse and agreement, but by force and aggression. The only difference between the 1922 and 1999 constitutions is the visibility of external influence. In 1922, it was done through indirect rule, where an external school of thought and person dictated laws for the people, but in the presence of the local people. In 1999, it was the same external school of thought, but this time it was done entirely by the local people. Without incurring any administrative cost, the same external school of thought figured out a way to continue its dominance in local life, denying millions of people the opportunity to fulfill their purpose in life. So, the colonization we're talking about is not about the physical presence of any person or people. It is also not about the specific governance design or a particular event that occurred at any point in time in the past, but the continuation of a specific ideology or school of thought. It is about the insistence of one external school of thought to dominate and derail another. Now, what is this school of thought? Simply put, it is what is paraded today as capitalism or the free market, an illusion that there is some free market that we operate in, where everyone competes equally, and that the forces of demand and supply determine who wins or loses in the market. But what is not communicated is that this ideology is only a system of entrenching or consolidating gains from the past, no matter how it was achieved. It is about tailoring the legal and cultural frameworks to ensure that evil done in the past remains fundamental foundations to today's dynamics, ensuring that those who suffered in the past would have to work harder or suffer more now to benefit from the so-called free market. It is also not communicated that what is accepted and declared legal is already skewed to favor those who benefited from the evil in the past and inconvenience those who suffered in the past. Take the example of the Nigerian War between 1967 and 1970. A lot of communities that did not even know anything about the war and never had their children in the military saw their young people killed. Children lost their parents while other places continued their lives. Those who suffered it now had to work harder to compete with those who never suffered any loss from the war. But the Nigerian War is relatively nothing compared to the real thing at stake. Right from the time of slavery, those who suffered from it had to work harder to get to the point where those who benefited from it only needed to build from those benefits. But the main issue here isn't necessarily about what has happened, but what could happen in the future. To keep it mild, this capitalist mindset is unsustainable. It is not the right ideology the world needs to exist and remain stable. This is why it has always been under threat, shifting from one form to the other. Moreover, we can easily see the trend to estimate its future. If you look at the world several years ago, more people had access to the world's resources. Houses and cost of living were more affordable. But as this capitalism mindset continues to grow, more people are being forced out of the value chain. Regardless of whatever nation, it is getting much harder to afford a house, food, or raise a family. This is the direct consequence of capitalism ideology, enabling few to consolidate wins from whatever past background. As life continues, it is safe to project that more and more people will get poorer and fewer people will get richer. That means that fewer people will compound their hold on assets, and this will happen by more people compounding their loss to assets. This trend may likely continue until there are just a few people who hold significant assets, and further push to gain from each other may just trigger a global catastrophe. You can get a copy of Legacy to learn more about this. One way most people, particularly Africans and Nigerians, look at this is by claiming they won't be in the world when such happens, or they try to exempt themselves and their families from being at the end of this suffering. This thought is one of the things stabilizing colonization in Nigeria. They forget that it does not work that way. They seem not to understand the true dynamics of existence, as we discussed in the video that talks about the purpose of life. They also do not seem to realize that it could be the same colonial system confining them into such distorted thoughts. As earlier said, you can either fulfill your purpose consciously or unconsciously serve as a support system to another person's purpose. As Nigerians, and indeed Africans, we cannot ignore that our purpose in life is beyond being a support to an unsustainable system, a system that cannot even survive without our suffering. As mentioned in one of the past videos, the suffering, or let me say the stupidity of the Nigerians and Africans is arguably the biggest support to the colonial system. The acceptance that our role is only to supply human and material resources to a system that could easily collapse soon is nothing more than stupidity. If you study African ideals well, you will realize that our role is more than what we've been reduced to, and we need to rise to live up to our potential. To do that, we have to start with the most obvious things, and there is no other obvious way outside decolonization. You may be wondering, how can we do that? The answer is simple. It is to remove the ideologies that are not helpful to the economy. It is about removing the 1999 Constitution. The main or only infrastructure supporting colonization in Nigeria today is the 1999 Constitution as amended. It was designed, possibly unconsciously, to support the colonial entrenchment, making the Nigerian people and resources a feed for the enrichment of a few external players. This is why it features several fundamental flaws that allow it to be abused. One of those flaws is that it supports one person or group of people to capture and subdue the different arms in the federal government. This weakens the different institutions and enables corruption and flagrant disregard for the rule of law. From a moral standpoint, as much as it is paraded as the supreme law of the land, the fact is that none of the pre-existing institutions before colonization agreed to it. Most of those communities do not even know the contents of the Constitution. And if you recall from one of the videos, we did mention that the biggest obstacle between the Nigerian potential and the reality is the contradiction between the demands of the Constitution and the norms of these communities. No matter how much the Constitution is forced on people, it does not change some facts. One is that Nigeria is the congregation of the different ethnic institutions, and only those institutions retain the right to design and agree the right constitution for their association. The second one is that provided there is no deliberate effort to merge the ethnic systems within the Constitution, the nation will continue to head downward economically and morally. The third part is that the continuation of these two will continue to support the colonial or capitalist mindset, and this would aid push the world closer to disaster. So, the way forward is for Nigerians to repeal the Constitution and replace it with one designed to compete economically in the global market. It needs to be replaced with one that appreciates diversity and weaves mutual respect and fairness as the baseline for existence. If you study Nigerian ethnic communities very well, you will agree that this is the only way to strengthen Nigeria's institutions. But there is something else we need to say here. Apart from strengthening the democratic system in Nigeria, creating a system that maximizes Nigeria's diversity and encourages fairness is the only model that can sustain our world. This is because for people to afford basic things of life, it must take place in a socially cohesive environment. Assuming we somehow are able to provide the material needs of all human beings without defining social boundaries or standards, we are still going to have a dysfunctional and unstable world. This means that social cohesion is a unique issue on its own that needs to be addressed globally. Replacing the old constitution with a new one designed from this perspective is the most obvious path to the Nigerian and indeed African economic boom. It will eradicate insecurity, hatred, and corruption. This is what will attract other people from other nations who feel disillusioned by the capitalist mindset to want to come, not just to invest, but to become stakeholders in this new economic system. Luckily for us, the path to achieving this is even much easier than we can imagine. It requires intrinsic diversity, which is arguably Nigeria's greatest asset. To make this happen, we just need to exploit the provisions within the current system. For example, the existing constitution states that the government derives its power from the people. That means that, legally speaking, the sovereignty of the state belongs to the people. It also means that the entire government structure is a mere choice of the people. As a result, the people retain the exclusive right to, without notice, remove the entire government structure and replace it with a new one. The biggest misconception in Nigeria has been the notion that only the government or the state or national assembly can enact laws. Therefore, they are the only ones that can initiate this process. This is an absolute fallacy. The federal, state, and local governments are limited to operating within the confines of the Constitution as agreed by the people. But the people are not limited. That means that the people retain the exclusive prerogative to replace an existing constitution. Ideally, for a nation to progress, The Constitution, which is the operating manual, should represent the will of the people. But Nigeria, like many other nations, is unique. They are not a system of homogeneous, independent people, but comprised of people who belong to unique ethnic institutions. It means the people in Nigeria should be better seen as the different pre-existing ethnic communities. That means the constitution that will work for Nigeria should integrate the various ethnic institutions and interests into a cohesive economic force. This task requires a high level of reasoning and determination. To achieve this, one has to be inspired, determined, and willing to look beyond divisions and sentiments. It requires knowledge of the past and revelation of what lies ahead. The entire vision of the NEAT initiative is to drive this. It is to leverage every peaceful and innovative channel to consciously design a better tomorrow. But here is the important part. The NEAT initiative is not just about awareness or spreading of information. It is about bringing the right people together to create a new framework and a new nation. It also involves addressing pressing issues, to support business initiatives that would benefit the entire nation, to tell stories through movies and TV shows that will inspire, educate, and challenge all of us to see things differently, to think differently, to learn how to promote differences as a means of progress. It is also about developing technologies, the kind of technology that would hold the government accountable, inspire economic growth, and promote unity rooted in recognition of diversity. As a politician, academician, philosopher, philanthropist, innovator, investor, or spiritual leader, we need you. Visit the platform or send us an email to learn more about the specific thing you can do in this bold initiative to build a new nation. Remember, no one can propel this nation, the continent, or even the world if we don't. Thank you, and see you soon.